All right. I'll go with the audio set. Okay, but actually we'll just jump right in. So the only sort of extra overview thing that I just want to say is please ask questions at any time. You know, there's information and resources in here, but as I say at the beginning of a lot of my presentations, what's most important is making sure that you get what you're looking for. And so if I'm not covering the things that you have questions about, please make sure to ask those questions so that we can do that. All right. Oh, and Zoom never lets me use the keys. Okay. So first of all, just for anybody who doesn't know all three of us yet, I always like to remind folks of who we are in the Free Health Office. I do think will go away if I get into it and then ignore it. That works. So you probably know me. I think I've probably met most of you. I'm seeing loads of familiar faces by this time of year. So I'm Katie Lipp, and this is Jackie Collette, who, if you haven't come into the office yet, you get a chance to say a brief hi to Jackie before meeting with me. So you'll see her regularly. And then Sander is the student who works in our office. So Sander's been working with us for at least a year now, if I remember correctly, and is our sole student worker right now. They manage our Instagram page, among other things, those weekly emails you get. Sandra also puts all of those together. They serve as a peer advisor in addition to supporting our office. And so if ever you're looking for a peer to connect with, who sort of has a formal official capacity, Sandra's a great person to reach out to, and you can always reach them just by direct message on Instagram. I mean, obviously you can email them too, but the Instagram is our formal Free Health account space. Still there it goes. All right. All right. So don't be like this cute little kitten. So where I want to start is really when we think about the summer and planning for the summer, one of the most common questions that comes up for me, apart from how do I find something, is what should I be looking for, right? I want to be a physical therapist, a dentist, a nurse, a veterinarian, and what should I be doing over this, how should I be using my summers? And so I like to encourage people to think outside the box, or in this case, the checkbox of, well, I guess I have to do this and this and this, right? So we want to come out of that little kitten's box. And so what the information up here is about is ways to think about what ultimately makes a qualified applicant for health profession schools. Okay, there's a couple slides here. It's not just these three things, just one and I'll fit in one place. And so I've sort of generally put a bunch of what could be more detailed information into some categories of things that you can do that involve exploring the career that you're interested in. Things that you can do that relate to demonstrating a commitment to serving others. Things that you can do that could demonstrate cultural awareness and humility. And these are not exhaustive lists, right? I'm fitting them on a slide. And so I'm sure that you can think of other things as well that would demonstrate some of these things. Here's some more examples, okay? And again, more info on the website. It goes to a whole page about understanding qualifications for health profession schools. But the message that I'm trying to send here is that rather than thinking about, well, I know I have to have clinical experience and I know I have to have research experience and I know I have to, those are the two most common things that come up, right? No, I have to have an internship. That's the other thing. Throw that checkbox away. And if you like checkboxes, like create yourself new ones of, okay, I know I have to build my interpersonal skills. What am I going to do that's going to help me to build that? Or maybe, I'm actually really super strong in my interpersonal skills. Like that's something that comes naturally to me. And on top of that, I've built it through my, customer service job at Starbucks. I always use Starbucks as an example, I don't know why. And through my leadership in the animal welfare student organization. And I feel really, really skilled in that area. But I really don't know that I've challenged myself in thinking about taking ethical responsibility in, tricky situations and have I done anything that sort of helps me to build those particular skills and that I can explain in the future on a resume, on an application? Here's what I've done, and here's the skills that I've built. So think about these skills and these types of experiences as if you want to the new sort of checkbox. Yes, research can fit into that because it helps you develop things. Yes, clinical experience can fit into that because it helps you develop many of these things, right? But ultimately, these are the sorts of things that the professional schools, however many years from now that you might apply, or if you end up not applying to health profession schools, then just your job in the future, right? These are the sorts of things that they're going to be looking at. Any questions on that? That's just the starting place, the overview of like answering that question of, well, or starting to answer that question of what should I be doing? Any questions on that starting place? I was like this brief overview. And the link at the bottom takes you to a website that actually has a recording of a whole session that we did. It's a few years now, maybe 3 years ago, or maybe even pre-COVID, I can't remember. A whole session that we did on diving into this question of how do we understand these different sort of qualifications and competencies. So you can take a look at that as well. But that's, that's not just step one, but sort of like step all. It's you always got to be thinking about those things, right? And continually assessing over time how your qualifications are and aren't building, and the different ways in which you may need to build up certain areas of your experiences. And so this is a model that I've been using for several years to kind of give a visual example of, okay, well, how does that translate into what I should actually do, right? What's the concrete thing? And so that blue circle relates to those prior two slides, right? And that's why you have to constantly be thinking about what are the things that I'm working on? What are the areas that I'm really strong in? What are the areas that maybe I need to beef up and challenge myself and build those qualifications a little bit more? But really the first circle that I think everyone should start with is the red one, the non-negotiables, because they're non-negotiable. And what those are, though, depends on you. That I put as a term to really mean like personal decisions. So is it a non-negotiable for you that you are going to be at home over the summer, or that you're not going to be at home over the summer, right? Is it a non-negotiable for you that you have to be earning an income, not just getting paid so you can cover your housing for the summer, but like I need something left over at the end of the summer to cover my books or my travel or whatever it is that needs to be covered. Those are all personal decisions, right? The non-negotiables look different for different people, but you kind of have to start there because that's going to put limits in different areas and narrow your search depending on what your personal non-negotiables are. So that's got to be step one. But after that, then I actually suggest starting with moving to the yellow circle, right? That blue one we're saving for last. The yellow circle is next because that's the circle where you get to dream. That's the circle where there is no boundaries and you just get to think about what are all the cool things out there? What would be really exciting? This is the brainstorm circle where you don't limit yourself by saying, but that doesn't have anything to do with my future career, right? Well, I can't do that. Or that's impossible. There's no, funding for me to get to that place. I can't do that. This is the dreaming circle, right? So you start with what would you love to do? What would you like your summer to look like? You could do anything in the world. Don't limit it to one thing. Brainstorm a few different exciting things that you'd like to do. They could be broad, vague ideas, like I want to be in a different country. It doesn't have to be any more specific than that. Or it could be really narrow and specific. There's this really cool organization near home that I've always loved, and I really, really want an internship there. Whatever it is that you want to do. And then you get to the blue circle, right? So then we've got, okay, here's what I really, really want to do. Here are the non-negotiables that are gonna, put some parameters around that. And then once I've brainstormed these few things that I'm excited about, but I look at them in terms of what might help me the most to build qualifications that are going to be important for me. If you're a first-year student, that might be everything. In other words, because you still have several years of preparations towards whatever comes after college for you. Your qualifications, you know, nobody's a blank slate, right? But you have more that you're working on building than someone who's a junior moving into their final summer, right? And they're sort of building on what they've done the last 2 college summers. So again, it's gonna look a little bit different for everyone, but that center point, that's my perfect summer, right? Where all of those things kind of converge. Questions about that? Thoughts about that? Okay, so then we get into the nitty gritty, right? So, all right, Katie told me to think about qualifications and like how to do the brainstorming, but I want to know what do I do, right? What are the resources? What do I do? So my little background is the hand heart, because you've got to give love to all of these things, okay? I frequently in the fall am consistently talking about making sure that you're focusing on taking care of yourself, transitioning to college if you're a first-year student, or to Mount Holyoke if you're a transfer student. And just making sure that your foundation is really, really strong, right? It's old, what's the word I'm looking for? Metaphor. But you can't build a really solid house on top of a crumbling foundation. So make sure that that's always the case. And prioritize your academics, right? This may feel like it has nothing to do with the summer, but one of the things that's really, really tricky and actually can impact summers is if you're struggling in classes that really are going to have an impact on your preparations towards whatever career it is that you're thinking about, interested in exploring, right? It's much harder to have a really low grade in a class that you then have to figure out later on, like, I didn't get a high enough grade to meet my prerequisite. How do I repeat this course? What are my options? What's the best choice for that, right? Or, you know, in general, I'm having a really hard time with my classes. What do I need to do to get into a stronger position? It's harder to come back from that than to sort of address it right away, address it in the moment. So again, on the surface, doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the summer, but if you find yourself in the position of, I got D+ into my prerequisite courses and I can't move on to Orgo 2 without retaking Orgo 1, right? Then maybe I have to take classes over my summer, but I didn't really want to because I had this other cool plan. It does, you know, it does make a difference and it does have an impact. So that's number 2. Number 3 was kind of what I mentioned on the other slide. You know, what I forget the colors now that I put on the ring. So that's the yellow ring. What are you excited about? That's number 3. Okay, so this is step 1. That's the foundational part. After that, the one thing I'll say that's not on this slide is get ready for a lot of work in finding something for the summer. Some people, I don't know, maybe you're in the know, maybe you came to a talk like this, maybe a career counselor from the CDC told you, or you have, you know, an older sibling who told you. Some people know that finding these summer opportunities can take a lot of time. But if you don't know, if you haven't experienced it, it can come as a little bit of a surprise sometimes. Nobody's unaware that it's a competitive landscape out there, but you might not be aware that you might need to apply to 25 or 30 things to get one, not 3. Okay, so prepare in that way. That's related to the get organized in that think about the fact that this is actually going to become part of your time management strategy, right? That it's no longer just your classes and your on-campus job and your, you know, downtime. But it's also, okay, I got to block out time for working on my resume and for looking for things I want to apply to and for writing those applications and asking for letters of recommendation. You've all applied to college, so you know, you know what an application process feels like. This may not be to the level of applying to college, but it is going to take time. And so start off really organized. whatever system of organization works really well for you. And if you're not really sure what's gonna work really well for you, ask other people for tips about what worked really well for them. I've become a super big fan of spreadsheets in the last decade or so. I find them really, really effective organizational tools, but you might use something different that works better for you. But start organized, because one thing that will happen is you're gonna start looking through all of these different lists, some of which I'm gonna show you, of, oh, here's a list of, cool internships that are, about research, and here's a list of cool internships that are about the health professions, and here's another list of cool internships that are open to, it doesn't have to have any particular type of work authorization, right? And then you realize, oh my God, and like half of the things cut across all of those lists, and I'm looking at the same things over and over again. But you've looked at so many of them that you forget that you've seen them, and then you start writing them down in different places. It can get very confusing. So stay organized, make notes, again, in whatever format's gonna work for you, of what you've done, if you've reached out to places, who you've communicated with. If you communicated with an actual person and not just a random email address, what was the person's name? Like, really track what you've done, so that you can follow up on it later. The person-to-person communication will also relate to networking, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then dates and deadlines, which is obviously also part of, being organized. I mentioned that in preparation for today, I was looking at one particular summer opportunity that has a deadline coming up in about 3 weeks. It's not the only one. There's a bunch that have deadlines coming up in December, and then a bunch more that have really early January deadlines. And they'll continue. There'll be February deadlines in March, and it's not that they're all so early, but who knows? Your dream program may be a January 1st deadline. I know some of them do have January 1st deadlines. Ridiculous day to have a deadline, but they do. Bless you.
Thank you.
And you will almost certainly, if you're applying to a lot of things, need to ask for letters of recommendation. Not all summer jobs / internships / programs will require them necessarily, but again, if you're applying broadly, then you'll probably need to ask for them. Actually, before I switch the slide, let's take a minute on letters. The slide just says give lead time, but has anyone in the room, I haven't even asked who's like a first year sophomore, but so who in the room at this point has asked for a letter of recommendation from someone who works at Mount Holyoke? Very small number. Okay, so for most of you, this is going to be a new thing. In addition to giving lead time to people, a few things to think about. I'm trying to think of like what are the most common things that I tend to talk about with students. One is think about who knows you best, right? Worry less about what that person's title is, what their role is at the college, who knows you best, okay? Now, alongside that, certain summer programs, I'm just gonna, opportunities, whatever you want to call them, may be specific about who they want letters from. A program might say, you must submit a letter from a professor. Okay, then if the person who knows you best isn't a professor, I'm not a professor, by the way, make sure you know who is a professor, right? Professors are the people who teach the classes. And so if the person who knows you best is not a professor, then who knows you second best, right? But so you're gonna have to sort of overlap those two things, which are kind of the top two categories, I would say, of primary importance in terms of who to get a letter from. If there's no specifications from a program about who they want a letter from, then who knows you best is probably the right person, with the caveat of just make sure you're thinking about what you're applying for, and that the person who knows you best can speak to things that are relevant for that. And if you're not sure, it's the person who knows you best. You can have those open conversations. You can say, Katie, I want to apply for this particular program that is all about chemistry research, and I'm super excited about it. And this is my top choice. And I feel like you know me best. Can you write me a letter of recommendation for this program? And I'm going to say, probably, I'd be happy to write you a letter. And I've never seen you in a research environment. I've never seen you in a chemistry class. What do they want to know about you that I can speak to? And assuming that I can do that, I'll absolutely write you a letter. And that's the kind of conversation you can have with anybody, right? If they're not the right person because they don't know you in the right capacity, then hopefully they'll let you know that. But you might also be able to sort of figure that out or think about that on your own as well. I knew there was something else I wanted to say about letters. Oh, I think asking in person is nicest, personally speaking, as someone who gets letter requests. I like to be asked in person. Like someone who's already asked me before and they're like, hey, Katie, I'm applying for this other thing. Could you send a letter there too? Fine, send me an email, right? I can't speak for other people, but that's my advice is start with in person if the person's here or someone who you can see in person elsewhere. Certainly, if you're here and they're halfway around the world, send them an email. Yeah.
I was gonna say, how do you like, if you're applying to like 2025 things, how do you make it like easier for the recommenders to do the letters? Like, I feel like that would be 2025 applications for them. What I'm saying, making sense.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, it took me a second, because when you said 2020, I heard the year
Oh.
2025. Okay, I'm with you now, I got it, I understand the question. That's a great question. So usually, it can be a little bit different for summer compared to, let's say, professional school applications, because summer applications frequently, the letters are kind of specified to that particular program. And so, yeah, it can be a lot. But don't not apply because you're worried about your letter writers. And I'm gonna say that again. Don't not apply for you because you're worried about your letter writers. I've had too many people say to me, I feel so bad asking my letter writers again. Oh, well, if you're doing it professionally and respectfully, that's the professional norm. It's just how it is. We all do it. We all have to ask for letters. We all at some point probably are going to write letters for somebody else. That may not be for a couple of decades, but at some point, right, you're probably going to be doing that. So that's part of it, is not to be callous about it, to be respectful, to give them lots of lead time, to be as organized as possible. So this is part of the specifics of answering your question. Be as organized as possible. I'll tell you what I don't like as a letter writer. I don't like it when someone says, can you write me a letter for these 1 to 2 programs? And I say, sure, and I do it. And then they send me an email and say, oh, can you send it to these other 10 places? That's hard. Because that's harder for my planning purposes. If someone asks me, can you write me a letter in general, and I will send you an email with all of the details, right? That, like all in one place, I really appreciate that. The other thing that letter writers will appreciate is, back to my spreadsheets, but it doesn't have to be a spreadsheet. If you can say where the letter is going to, like the name of the program, where it has to be sent, if it's an upload link, if it's an email address, whatever it is, and then also a link to the program. I will always go check out the program. That's who I am as a letter writer. I want to see what I'm writing a letter for. I want to know what they say so that I can write the right letter that fits for what the program is. And I don't want to have to go Googling your program. So give me a link so I know exactly what it is that you're applying for. The other thing that's really helpful for letter writers is if you can give them, and it may not necessarily be all of these things, but your resume for sure is really helpful. If you have something you've written for the application or a general statement about what you're hoping to get out of your summer, that can be really helpful for a letter writer to know. A letter writer should not be summarizing your resume. That's not why you're giving it to them. It's context. It's helpful for that big picture. So that I, for example, if I'm writing you a letter that I'm going to pick my chem research again, for that chem research opportunity, if I then see, oh yeah, and this person has, you know, been in this related lab here on campus, or has, trying to give another good example. Let's say took Chem 199, right? That's a spring course, but for first year students, chemistry research course, right, in the spring. And so while I'm not going to talk about you in those experiences, because I don't know you in those experiences, it can contextualize what I might say about you in terms of how I know you, right? So those sorts of things are helpful as well.
I'm just trying to, I'm going back to the original question to think if there's anything else in particular.
Oh. Yeah, my list of things to give your letter writers for organization to make it easier for you. Tell them exactly what the deadline is. That's super key. I don't ever forget to do that. Tell them exactly what the deadline is. And I love it when you order them in terms of deadlines, so I don't have to figure it out. I can see here's the first deadline, here's the last deadline. That's really helpful. Beyond that, I can't think of much else for, the question of how do I help them to not have to submit too many things? Because after that, it kind of comes down to the letter writer and how they write their letter. The only other thing I could say is if you're applying to, let's say, 25 things, but they fall into two really different categories of experience. If you happen to have two different letter writers and have like one writing for one type of experience and then one writing for another type of experience, that can help them to not have to write radically different, for one person to not have to write radically different letters. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a common practice. It's something that's coming to my mind right now in the moment. But if I'm your letter writer and you're like, Katie, I'm applying for this research position and this position that's like working as a medical assistant, and they're very different. That's okay. That's fine. The reality is when you're writing a letter about somebody, the content only changes so much depending on the different position, because I still know you in the way I know you. Right? The way I know you doesn't change. So it might be a matter of a couple sentences here or there that I'm adjusting to make it fit appropriately, but the bulk of it is going to be the same. Any other letter questions? Yeah.
If you're asking for a letter of recommendation from your employer and they have your resume, do I send them my resume again when asking for the letter?
I would, just because it makes it easy. Yeah, so part of making it easy is when everything's in one email.
Okay.
Right, so like, yes, your employer has your resume, yes, your academic advisor can look up your transcript, but like if there's things you want this person to know, put it all in one place, make it easier. Yeah. Anything else on letters? So now we get into the even more specific, right? So that was the big picture of planning, but here's the resources you can actually use. And so I will show you a few of these, not all of these. Some of them are just there for you to be able to, look at on your own at a future time. So what's on this slide are the resources that are about sort of figuring out how to do this. It's sort of related to the kinds of stuff we were just talking about. How do I think through this process? What types of things do I need to prepare? How do I get my resume in shape for what I'm going to be doing? What exactly is networking? How can I do networking? Who do I need to reach out to? That's what these resources are about. It's that big picture planning stuff. These are not the resources that are going to list specific internships and jobs, but that's on the next slide. So this is the planning stuff. And so I want to show you a couple of things. Bear with me. And when you're not on your own computer, it doesn't just pop up. Okay. All right, so this is from the CDC. I guess I should stay here so I can show you some things, right? So there's loads of stuff on here, okay? You can see there's 6 sort of steps at the top. And then there's some more information down here, some timeline info, planning resource, right? But the steps, I'm going to show you a couple things in the first 2, okay? So preparing and planning, what I want to point out on this is that there's resources for pieces of this, right? Getting your resume together, how do you write cover letters, building and interviewing skills, requesting recommendation letters, right? What we were just talking about. There's a lot more details in this whole section. And so you can really dive into these written resources to get more information about these specific pieces of what you need to get together, what you're gonna have to use for the applications themselves. So that's some of the stuff on step one. And number two, the networking piece, right? The reaching out. So let me pause here for a second and just say, you potentially, every search looks different. You might not necessarily like network with anybody, meaning you might find 15 programs that you think are amazing and you apply to all of them and you get into 2 of them and great, like in no part of that process did you reach out to an alum. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Yeah, you got 2 offers, right? That's a successful summer search. And I do find that a lot of people find that connecting with people in the field not only helps to give them ideas and suggestions of other places to look and people to talk to, but it's also just building the people you know for the future. You may connect with somebody this year and it doesn't really bear fruit and turn into anything in particular for this summer. But maybe a year from now, you're like, oh my gosh, I talked to that really, really cool person. And now I'm applying for a position where that person works. Maybe I should reconnect with them. So you never know where it's gonna lead. But this page has a whole bunch of networking resources. So this link here that says networking and informational interview advice, I love this link. It just gives you a lot of tips on how do you actually go about this thing. How do you reach out to strangers and talk to them about jobs and professional stuff? That's what this is all about. It can tell you about how to do things. It can also give you like tips on, no-nos and don't do this kind of stuff. So this is a really great tool or resource, not tool. And then the other 2 things that I want to mention that are links on here are the Gates and LinkedIn. So quick show of hands, how many people have heard of the Gates? Great, how many, leave up your hands if you've gone on the Gates. Yeah, far fewer. Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to go on the Gates. Again, it's not gonna log me in right away. It should be my same login, so keep your fingers crossed. Hate not being on my own computer. Success. Okay, so welcome to the Gates. Okay, there's a bunch of different things on here, as you can see across the top. We're not going to look at all of those. Honestly, I don't look at most of those because it's not how I use the Gates. But network is what I show people all the time. So what you can do, let's just do a general search. And I don't know, throw out a search term that you think might be interesting or relevant for some professional topic that you're interested in. Give me a word. Like a profession or a job or
Research assistant.
okay, I'm just gonna put in research. We'll keep it broader. Research, okay. We're gonna apply that. And then after it does this thing. Okay, and then I'm gonna say, so notice that 14 is just the online users, right? There's some more people beyond that, just those 14. But then I'm gonna narrow it down. I'm gonna say, okay, I'm interested in research and I want to be in Boston. So I'm gonna apply that. Now we're gonna see how many people pop up. Okay. Bunch. Right, and there's some more loading. And so once you, and these are all, right, this is Mount Holyoke. This is a Mount Holyoke network. These are all Mount Holyoke folks. And so once you get that, then you can open up somebody's profile and there's this message tab. Okay, and so I'm not gonna message Libby. But you can send this person a message, I've read your profile, you know, I'm really interested in, Libby, by the way, happens to be a fairly recent alum, and I know her, which is why I'm calling her Libby and not Elizabeth, and so she's the type of person who more recently than someone who's my age has done the kind of stuff that you might be looking for. So she might be a really good contact to say, hey, like, I see what you're doing on, you know, that's listed on the gates. That's super interesting. I would love to do the kind of work that you're doing. You know, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And then you wait and you hear back, and when Libby writes back, and so I'm not trying to offer up Libby here, but when whoever it is writes back and says, yeah, absolutely, then you can write your questions, or if the two of you have, you know, agreed, yeah, let's have a quick phone call, you could chat for 15 minutes. Don't ask for too much of their time, right? This is just a quick starting place. If they offer more time, lovely. But this is how you can connect with people using the gates, okay? One tip that you're going to see, and I don't remember where on the CDC page it's written, but it's there, is don't ask an alum, doesn't matter if it's a recent alum or a not recent alum, but don't directly ask an alum for an opportunity. Don't ask alum for a job, for an internship, for a shadowing experience. The reason for that is about relationship building. So when you ask someone who's an alum in particular directly for something like that, because they already have this, like, it's Mount Holyoke connection, they want to help you, mostly, I can't speak for everyone, but they want to help you. But they can also feel put on the spot or feel bad if they have to say no in that circumstance. They may want to say yes, but they're not allowed to by their employer. Better not to put them in that position so that you can maintain the relationship. You're building the relationship with networking, not building the shadowing opportunity or the volunteer opportunity, right? So you can talk to them about what you're interested in. You can ask them for suggestions. If they work in an organization that you're excited about, you can even ask them, do you know anything about, like, does your organization offer internships? Or again, that's asking for information. Just don't directly ask them, can you give me an internship? Can I come shadow you? Things like that. If they want to, and they know what you're looking for, they can offer. And sometimes do, that does happen. So that's the gates. I'm not going to go into LinkedIn. I'm not going to do the same thing in LinkedIn, just in the interest of time, because I want to show you some other things. But LinkedIn, for those who haven't used it, I'm sure people know that LinkedIn is this, you know, not a Mount Holyoke thing. It's for anybody. So it's public, and part of one of the results of it being a public platform is that there's even more Mount Holyoke alums who are there. The Gates is relatively new. It was implemented a couple of years ago, and so it's still growing. So it's a great resource. I think it's the best starting place because it gives you that Mount Holyoke connection, but LinkedIn is another wonderful resource for finding people. Play around with the search and filter tools. There's, you know, different ways to find people, and you can always talk with me or a career advisor at the CDC if you need tips on LinkedIn or one of the peer career advisors as well at the CDC. But that's another great online networking tool. Okay, any questions before I jump back to the slide and show you a couple of other things, but specific to the networking and the CDC internship resources?
Just in the interest of attendance, because I know some of you will have to leave before the end of our presentation, make sure that you've tapped your card on the iPad extra.
Yeah, where is the iPad?
Yeah.
It's here. Okay.
It's a word.
Oh, I'll check it.
Now it probably won't work because it's.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, try it. Hold your card till it beeps 3 times. Yep, that worked. That works too. Good. Is it going that way? Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if the screen dies, you know, closes or whatever, then just let me know and we'll wait it up. All right, anything else on this, you know, I started here on this page, so anything else on any of these before we move on? Okay, I'm gonna come back to length. I'm not gonna like totally gloss over that. I'll come back to it, but I wanna show you a couple of things first. So the next link is our website, the pre-health specific, our building experience page. So if you wanna use the pre-health website, the resources that are here, and you're like, where do I find summer stuff on the pre-health website? It's this page. It's the building experience page. So when you go to the home page and you see the menu over here on the left, right, go to building experience. And this is where you're going to land. So you're gonna see some general tips at the top. And again, remember, this is building experience in general. This is not all about summer. But it's all related to, it's all building experience. So then you're gonna find the accordion paragraphs down here. Again, lots of different resources in here, but Plan Your Summers, as you can see, is one of them. So check that one out. You're gonna see a lot of the same links that I'm showing you on the slides. Right, some of that looks familiar probably. And then down here, this is this presentation right now, so that's gonna get updated. And this is another tool that I want to show you, this spreadsheet, and there's a direct link to it from the slides as well, and I'll share the slides. This is our internal document for looking for internships. So now I'm starting to move a little bit away from like the planning and prompting, more into where do I find these things to apply to, okay? We have curated this list. It's just internally done in our office. Our students who work with us doing a lot of work on this. It is by no means exhaustive. It is like a tiny fraction of what might be out there. But what we've tried to do over the years is to list here the summer opportunities that we are aware of that are pre-health related in some way, that our past students have done, and just basically putting them into a list. But there's a couple of specific things here to be aware of. So the kind of place where everything is this all opportunities, right? You scroll down, we've got a couple hundred things that are listed here. You can play with it and see what's in there. But notice we've got these two tabs over here. I know, I can't move that over. So for international students and open to undocumented and documented students, these two tabs are going to list opportunities that we've double checked and we know are available for students with these couple of statuses. And if you are a student who's undocumented, documented, international, you know why this is important, because you're gonna look through a lot of opportunities and they're gonna say, US citizen and permanent resident, US citizen and permanent resident, US, it's gonna go on and on, and you're gonna feel frustrated. So we've tried to put together some of the things that we know of, just to give you at least one list, where you know that all of these should be open to you, regardless of what your immigration status is. So those are those two tabs. And then the blue one, or teal, whatever we want to call this, is actually my favorite one, because this is just a list of lots more links. There's like 50 something, I think. And this is going to take you to other databases and other spreadsheets and other websites that are all going to be listing a whole bunch of different opportunities. They're all a little different. Most of them are summer specific, but they may not all be. There's a wide variety, but it's like this one tab on our spreadsheet is a landing place that can take you to loads of other places, far greater than anything that we can curate here on this document. So that's another resource that you can check in with when you're actually doing that specific search of what are the things that I can apply for. Okay, and then I will go back to looking at a couple more resources for finding the internships, but I do want to mention Link. So raise your hand if you're not a first year student. Excellent. Okay, so sophomores, juniors, you are eligible to apply for Link. First year students, you'll be eligible next year, so still pay attention. So Link UAF funding is funding from the college to provide payment for an otherwise unpaid or underpaid, that's important to know, summer opportunity. It can be used in the United States as well as in other countries. The amounts will vary. If you're going to a country that's not your home country, you can get a greater amount because it can help to cover travel and so forth. There are certain experiences that are eligible for Link, certain experiences that are not. I'm not going to get into a whole Link thing. The CDC will do whole presentations on that. I'm not a Link expert at all. But it's an excellent resource that can open up the doors to experiences that you might not otherwise either find, or if you found them, might not apply for if you're looking for something that's paid. And so remember Link, because it's this great tool to actually open up possibilities. One way that it opens up possibilities that isn't always known is, let's say that you're like, you know what? I'm okay for this summer without earning money. I could do a volunteer thing if that's what it came down to. Like, yeah, I'd like to earn the money, but if I have to do something volunteer, it's okay. I'll be okay. I can do that this summer. But the place that you want to be at, or sorry, this is what I was looking for. Who's running the lab that you want to work in is like, sorry, I can't take you on unless you're paid. You've got to actually be an employee for liability purposes and reliability purposes and all of that. So Link can give you that opportunity as well, where it may not only be about the benefit to you and having income and being able to pay for the housing or whatever you're looking to pay for, but it may also actually make something possible that from the employer's side would not otherwise have been possible. Was that
I just left my card. with-
Oh, gotcha, okay. I didn't know which the question was about, all right, excellent. So this link, no pun intended, will take you to information about the Link application. It's in 2 steps. Step 1 is due on the 3rd Friday in February, which feels far away right now, but it will come quickly. You don't have to know what you're doing to complete step 1. In fact, the vast majority of people don't know, and that's kind of the point of step 1. It's the first step in the process. And what I tell sophomores and juniors is, if you're not sure, fill out step 1, because it keeps open this possibility for you. If you end up not needing the Link funding, no problem, that's fine. You can just stop the process. It's not a commitment, right? Filling out step 1 is not a commitment to accept Link funding, but it is an opportunity. It's opening the door to that. So if you're a sophomore or junior, check that out. Make sure that you can find it, make sure you know what you're going to need to do. It's not something that you can fill out the night before it's due, because there's some parts to it that take some time. For example, I just learned about this one this morning, and so I won't get it specific, because again, not a Link expert, but you need to do something before submitting step 1 that relates to your sort of exploration of the industry that you're interested in. That's what I recall from the meeting that we were just at. You can't do that the night before it's due, right? Likewise, you need an advisor to also review a part of your application, your step 1 application, and say that you have met with that advisor. Again, you can't do that the night before. So check it out early, just so that you know what the process looks like. Even if you're not finishing it until the new year, that's fine, but don't wait till the last minute, because it won't be able to be completed. Any questions, Link or otherwise, before we? Okay. There are events coming up, not from us. This is my only summer event. The other summer events with me are meetings. So if you want to meet with me about talking about your summer planning, awesome, we can do that. But the CDC will have other summer events. There is one virtually on January 22nd. That link takes you to the event hosting and handshake. But there's other events that are related. In other words, they do events on writing your resume. They do events on networking. So those sorts of things as well are going to be offered by the CBC regularly. Likewise, their career studios are great places for getting support with applications. If you haven't been to a career studios, they're every Tuesday evening in Blanchard in the Great Room, and Friday afternoon over at the CBC. And it's kind of like a supported working environment. So students will come, they'll bring what they're working on. There's a peer career advisor there, there's a staff career advisor there, and they kind of float around and help you out with what you're working on. It's like working in a class, right? It's kind of the idea. Okay, and so then this is, now I have to remember what I put in here. So the first link on this is the spreadsheet that I showed you, okay? This is the list, the slide with the list of places that are actually going to take you to things you can actually apply for, okay? so the first one is the spreadsheet that I showed you. The second one is actually from our website. I almost forgot about it. That we have a page on our website that, I think it's called Diversity in Pre-Health, and it has a bunch of different stuff on it, but one accordion paragraph lists a bunch of summer programs. So there's that resource, there's Handshake, right? Handshake, the whole jobs section. There's not an internships section, it's the jobs section, and then you've got to filter and look for what you're interested in, but it's gonna be a mix of full-time jobs that are for people who have graduated from college, as well as jobs for people who are in college and some summer opportunities. It's all in there. And then I'm skipping the middle one for a second. The last three, the McCullough Center, the Millerelli Center, and the Weissman Center all have some internships listed on their websites, so I gave links to those. And this, cross your fingers that this opens, because it would not open for me earlier. It opened. Excellent. It didn't like me on my computer apparently. All right, so this is a really cool tool. If you want to know what have other Mount Holyoke students done, here is a spreadsheet that goes back 10 years. And you can look up all of these different things that people have done. And so you can, you know, again, just like any other sort and filter and whatever. Let's see, industry. I actually have not used this since they updated it, which is why I'm looking around going, where is this? There's healthcare stuff that popped up, but there's not, it didn't, okay, so clearly I don't know how to use this, but you can figure it out. It also just disappeared, didn't it?
If you scroll, I tried scrolling up in the spreadsheet itself. Like on the.
Is that where it was? Oh yeah, it was at the top of the spreadsheet. But what I can't do is move over to the. There we go. What I need is a smaller screen. This used to be formatted differently, and I haven't used it since it was formatted differently. That's my excuse. Okay. I guess that was it. Did that update it? Did I take that out? Ah, that's what I wanted. Thank you. There we go. Health sciences medicine. Thank you, whoever told me that it felt rough. Okay, so I don't know how many are here, but there's a bunch, 29 pages of prior summer internships. There's a lot there, right? And so you can filter by, obviously, you'll probably don't want to search through 29 pages. But that's a really, really cool resource. So that's another great place to look, is this database. I'm so glad I opened because it was just not liking my computer earlier. Okay, and so the last thing that I want to show you is just a couple of specific programs. I'm not gonna go to the websites of all of these. In fact, I might not go to the websites of any of them, but I just want to mention a couple of programs. These are all different programs. I've got 3 pages of them. It's not just these 4. These are all different programs. And you know, some of them are ones we know super, super well. Others I wouldn't say I know super well. But that, you know, want to highlight for other reasons, like the first one, Bay State Medical Center, just down the road. If you're a local student from Hampshire, Franklin, or Hampden County, they have internships for local students. And that's one of the things to look at when you're looking at different postings is what is the eligibility? Okay, look for that in the very first thing you do. If you're looking on a spreadsheet or something and it has a column for eligibility, great, makes it even easier for you. But if it doesn't, you've got to look carefully on these websites. What is the eligibility? So in this case, for these Bay State Health, 2 different summer programs, like I said, it's only for local students. And so if you're not from one of those 3 local counties, you can move right on, right? And know that that's not going to work for you. Wait, there was something else I was going to say about that. Right. Some programs may not have strict eligibility requirements, but they will say things like competitive applicants may have these types of experiences, or we're looking for people who have done this or have these types of interests, right? And so start to differentiate for yourself between what are the hard and fast eligibility, like you just can't apply, you're simply not eligible if you don't meet these requirements, versus the things that they're saying, this is kind of what we're looking for, but we're not gonna tell you you can't apply if you don't meet all of these criteria. And this is true for jobs too. So when you're looking for jobs, whether it's, you know, summer jobs after graduation, so this can be about things called jobs, internships, programs, whatever, is, again, you don't meet the hard and fast requirements, okay, don't apply. But the other things, if you meet like 2/3 of them and you love the opportunity and you think you're gonna be great at it, whatever it is, apply. Because what's the harm in applying? What's the worst that can happen? You don't get it. Are you gonna get it if you don't apply? No. So it's kind of the same thing, right? So again, you're opening a door, and the way that it works on the employer side, or the person who's, you know, reviewing applications for a program, is they're looking for the people who are the best fit out of the applicant pool that they get in that particular moment. So do you meet every single thing that they've listed? Maybe not. But do you write an amazing application that tells them exactly why you're so in love with this program and it's gonna be a great fit for you? And they go, wow, this person is a best fit among this pool of applicants who we have right now. Yeah, that could happen. So don't discount something even if you don't meet all of the like preferred qualifications, is the language you'll often see on jobs. But do make sure that you notice the hard and fast eligibility requirements. Moving on, Cape Wildlife Center, there's lots of stuff out there for pre-vet students. We actually have tons listed on our spreadsheet. Cape Wildlife Center is on the Cape, meaning Cape Cod, if you're not local from Massachusetts. We've had several students go there and have really good experiences. So I put that one up there just as an example. The next one, DAAD Rise Germany, this one I put up as an example of something international. There's lots of stuff around the entire world. This is sort of a well-known and respected organization that's offering summer science research internships. And so you can take a look, they have a bunch of different things that are listed. The next one is public health specific. So if you're interested in public health, even if your sort of final career destination, so to speak, is a clinical career, if you want some knowledge and background in public health, you can still look at internships like this. That's great. So those are public health ones. I just noticed the time. So I'm just gonna highlight, I think, 2 more, which are on this page actually. The middle one, Project Horseshoe Farm. I'm mentioning this one because I always worry that people gloss over it for 2 reasons. One, it says Horseshoe Farm and everyone's like, it's a farm and not pre-vet, so moving on. It's actually not. This is a community health internship with human beings, not with animals. It has nothing to do with a farm or with horses or anything like that. So if you're interested in human health, this is a community health internship. This program's been around for 20 years now, maybe 15 years, something like that. It's a very cool program. The guy that runs it recently actually was on an episode of the podcast All Access Med School Admissions. Side note, great podcast, but anyway, it's a great program. The other reason I worry that people gloss over it is it's in Alabama, we're in Massachusetts. I mean, with a lot of students who don't want to go to Alabama, that's okay. But I wouldn't discount it completely if you're open geographically to being in different places. It's going, if you're not from that part of the country, it's gonna be a different experience for you. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's a great program. So it's one that I wanted to mention. And then the last one, which is my favorite one to talk about, is the Summer Health Professions Education Program, which is applicable to a lot of people in the room. So this is a super, super cool program, cuts across a lot of different health professions. They've got 13, 14, 15 sites around the country. It is free, which makes it super competitive to get into. It's for first years, sophomores, juniors, so basically anyone who still has a college summer ahead of them. It's a great program. They do have eligibility requirements just like most places do, so check them out, see if you meet them. If you don't, okay, move on. If you do, it's a great program to take a look at. Yeah, 2 other cool ones. Just on there. UMass has so this is UMass Medical School, which is in Worcester, so it's about an hour away from here. And then Vanderbilt has their program for LGBTQ health. which is another really cool resource and program. So I'm gonna skip over summer classes because I know we're over time. I will just briefly say, yes, summer classes can happen. No, they don't have to happen. If you want to talk about it, let's talk one-on-one. There's information here and on our website, on the academic planning page of our website about summer classes. And this is just our stay in touch information. So again, I know we're out of time, and so we're gonna wrap up. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sticking with me despite the fact that we're over. And make an appointment if you want to talk with me, or any of the CDC career advisors can also help you with summer planning.
And if anybody wants to take pizza to go, we can do that.